your password is probably useless. Let me explain. So, what are passwords? Passwords are something that you need to know to access a device. It can be your laptop, it can be your phone, doesn't matter. So, would you put the password of your device that you are trying to protect in a post-it note, stick on top of it? Probably not, right? At least if other people can access that device. Well, you are basically doing the same, just with some extra steps. Let's see. At the end of the day, even if you might not have a note with your password on top of your device, your password is stored in it. So it's somewhere inside your device, in the memory. It doesn't really matter if we are talking about your phone or your laptop, your tablet, whatever. It's somehow stored in the memory of that device. So maybe you don't know how, but you can already guess that more or less that there must be a way of accessing that password. And some spoiler, you might not be able to retrieve the original password, but for sure you will be able to change it for some new password that the hacker knows. So once this hacker has replaced your old password with a new one that they know, they can actually access your device. So how can we protect ourselves from this? Well, let's talk about the story. Once I was on a ski trip with some friend and I was very tired, so I rather stayed at the cafeteria of the ski station instead of going skiing. My friend lent me his laptop and he said, yeah, you can use it to watch movies. I have some things in there, TV shows or something like that. And I wanted to actually use the laptop, but when I tried to open it, it asked for a password. Damn, are we surprised? Yeah, not really. So the problem is my friend was in the mountains, didn't have signal, and I couldn't contact him. And I really wanted to watch something. I was pretty bored. So I said, well, if I'm lucky, I will find a way of skipping the password check. And I started trying. So this was a Linux laptop and it was fairly simple. When you boot up in group, you can actually access a command line already and you can put some options. So you can boot as the administrator. Once you are the administrator, you don't know the old password. But as the administrator, you can change the password of any user. So that's what I did. I got the list of the users. As an administrator, I can do that. And I checked my friend's username and then changed the password for something that I knew. I restarted the computer, I entered the password, and boom, it worked, of course. And I could finally watch the movie that I wanted. Once my friend came back, I said, hey, it was a bit tricky to watch something on your laptop, but we managed to. And I said, because you didn't tell me the password. And he said, oh yeah, right. Then how did you do it? And I said like, well, your disk is not encrypted, so I just accessed it and changed the password. And this is the key. Without encryption, passwords are useless. Useless. It might be harder or easier to change them. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of knowing the method. There is no password method that cannot be circumvented somehow. So if your device is not encrypted, having a password on it might protect it from your siblings or friends that don't know about technology. But it won't protect you against someone that knows the basics about passwords. Let's see a bit how this works. So how a password works in any device is they don't actually store your password, but they store a hash of it. A hash is a function that you can obtain easily from the password, but the result of that is what gets stored in the memory of your device, is not reversible to the original password. For example, imagine this hash function. This hash function is the parity of a number. So if your password is a number, let's say 123, instead of storing 123, the device can choose to store maybe the parity of it. So the parity of it would be 1 plus 2 plus 3, that is 6, and that it's an even number. So we will just store that it's an even number. If I see the information that your password is even, do I know your password? No, there are a lot of options. And actually, I cannot know directly your password. But if you tell me that your password is 123, I can check the parity and then see, this could be your password, so let's assume it is. Hashing functions are much more advanced, so don't think that it's that simple as a parity. Still, there are infinite possibilities that give the same hash. So if you just know the hash and you don't know the original password, you would have to brute force it. Brute forcing a hash means to try every possible combination until you get that hash. Because we said the function is not reversible, so you cannot go from hash to password, you can only go from password to hash. But if you tried every possibility for the input password until you find the hash that matches the one you're looking for, then you would know the password, right? So with the parity example, we would try 1. Parity of 1 is odd. So yeah, that's not our password. Then we would try 2, and then we could think that's the password. Because hash functions are much more complex and they minimize collisions, that is the number of passwords that give the same hash, it wouldn't be that stupid. But anyway, you could eventually get the original password from a hash. Thing is, that might take hundreds of years. So in general, a hash is or can be strong enough to protect your password, but is not strong enough to protect your device. Because, okay, an attacker might not know your password and might not be able to retrieve it, or it might take 100 years to do so. So let's say your device is safe from that aspect. But if the memory is not encrypted, the attacker can just replace that hash for a hash of a password that they know. In the parity example, I don't know that the password is 123, but I will just make a password and I say 1, and I can calculate the hash of 1 with the parity thing and say, okay, it's an odd number. I will store odd in the memory where the password is stored. Your password, I don't know it. But now I have replaced it for something that I know. Then I enter my new password, 1, and the parity says, yeah, it's odd. I see in the memory that it should be odd, so it must be correct. Go in, you can log in. Additionally, if your device is not encrypted, all of your files are available, with or without doing the password thing. So this is pretty dangerous. For example, I have an old Android phone, and even if I don't remember the password of it, I can just plug it to my laptop and then access to it with ADB, under the Debugger Bridge. It's an utility that lets you do some things, but you can launch a terminal inside the device and then you can explore the files and then you can copy the files that you want. So I don't know the password of this device. I don't need to even change it with this method, but I can still access all of the devices. In the case of a Linux laptop, like in the story, it's fairly simple. You can just start grub with some special option and get a root terminal, and then from there you can, of course, see all of the files and change the password. For a Windows system, there's a recovery utility like this that lets you reset the password. And it's very simple. You just have to start in a special mode and use that recovery utility to change the password to whatever you want. But even without this utility, and for any device, Mac, Windows, or whatever, you can always boot from a USB. So if you boot from a USB, you could have your own operating system, let's say a Linux distribution, in that USB, plug it to the device, and explore the files, change the passwords, or whatever you want. In phones, in Android, we saw that accessing the files is very simple. Getting or changing the password is harder, because ADB won't let you do that unless the phone is already root. If the phone is root, then you have a lot of options, and you could do this too. If the phone isn't root, you could replace the password, but you would lose all data. So there, the password kinda works. And in the case of an iPhone, iPhones are usually much harder to get into because, well, they are very restricted. But don't forget, even if it's an Android or an iPhone, don't forget that if the phone is not encrypted, the password at the end of the day is in the storage of the phone. So maybe you saw in the news when there is some terrorist or someone politically relevant, and then they get their phone and it's an iPhone, and it should not be possible to unlock it, but they bring it to a company and wow, the data is all there, and magically they did something that was supposed to be impossible. It isn't impossible. What they do in these cases is they unsolder the memory chips and then they access the memory from there. So if they want to retrieve some files or whatever, they can disassemble the iPhone, unsolder the chips, and access them directly. Even if the iPhone wouldn't let you do that, well, it's there somewhere. It's like the Post-it note. It's just harder. I said at the beginning of the video that it was like the Post-it note with extra steps. These are the extra steps, disassembling the iPhone and accessing the memory chip directly. But still, if someone really wants to get your data, it's possible. So, conclusion. Encrypt your devices, encrypt your phone, encrypt your laptop, encrypt everything. If you don't encrypt it, it's not secure. And what happens when you encrypt it is that as a hacker, I can no longer go to the memory and replace the password or get the hash of your password because I don't understand anything of the memory. And even if I disassemble your device and access the memory directly, it's encrypted. It's in another language that I don't know and that I cannot know, unless you give me the password. But the password is something only you know and something that you will decide if you give or not. So for most of the cases, it will be a very strong protection measure.